What's up, painters? Today we're painting the second character from HeroQuest, the Wizard. Let's paint. I started with a base coat of grey Seer through a rattlecan, then went to work blocking most of the colours in. The first colour is Sunset Orange from Vallejo for the top. The cloak I blocked in with Midnight Purple. Since this is a commission job, I'm trying to stick close to the box art, and I later decided this purple wasn't close enough, so you'll see me change it later. There isn't much flesh on this model, just the face and hands. I used Barbarian Flesh from Army Painter. I painted the HeroQuest models before I got my hands on the new Army Painter Fanatic paints, so none of the Army Painter paints in this video will be from the Fanatic range. For the wristbands, the boots and belt, I use leather brown. He also wears a leather headband. I didn't do it at this step. When I do the hair later, it'll get messed up and need to be touched up. If you're following this at home, I'd ignore the headband for now too, and just do it later once the hair's finished. This is where I changed the purple I was using. A mate had sent me some purples for a different project that I'm doing for him, and after some testing, I decided dark purple from Pro Acryl worked better for what I was looking for. As always, the paints will all be in the description below, sorted by brand and range. I know it can be a pain to keep track of which paint is from which brand or whatever. This way, if you're looking to use one of the specific paints from this video, you can just check the description. For the pants and sleeves, I used Royal Cloak. When I started painting this model, I realised that somehow I didn't have a teal. I have over 100 paints in my collection and had apparently never done a model or project that I needed a teal for. So one hobby store run later, a teal made it into my collection. On the box art, the wizard has blonde hair, so I fell back on my tried and tested desert yellow. On the art, it looks like his staff is fully gold, so I blocked it in with hammered copper. I'm not a fan of the staff being completely gold. I think it would look better if the majority was wood, than the part curling around the handle and the moon on top as gold. The problem I ran into was that the person who commissioned me to do these wasn't the person that the models are actually for. A friend commissioned me to paint these for one of their friends' birthdays, and I don't know that person, so I couldn't reach out to get approval for any changes from the box art, so I just tried to stick to the box art. The buckles on the cloak, belt, and boots all got hit with Shining Silver. These parts are all very small and aren't worth doing shading and highlighting on, so I decided to do them a pretty bright silver from the start. Now we're at the wash stage. The majority of the model got hit with a flesh wash. This was the skin, hair, shirt, leather parts, and the staff. Flesh wash is a pretty light wash, but I still watered it down a fair bit to do the top. For the teal parts, I used a watered down green wash. I went back and forth on what colour wash I wanted to use for this. I narrowed it down to a blue and green, but in the end I settled on the green over the blue because of the purple cloak. The purple already brings a bit of like bluishness to the model, and I figured going more green will help it stand out better and just have that contrast on the model. Time for highlights. I decided to work on the cloak first. It's a large part of the model, so I wanted to give it a bit of extra attention. I start with Royal Purple and just start building up the highlights. I'm careful to avoid the recesses, but I'm hitting most of the cloak. I didn't use a wash on the cloak, so the dark purple will be our shadows, so we don't want to lose that. I did a few thin layers of Royal Purple, leaving a bit of each previous layer showing, just to slowly build up the highlights until I'm happy with them. Next, it's a 50-50 mix of Lustful Purple and Royal Purple. This is a bit of a jump, more than I expected to be honest, but it's easy enough to fix later. So I work around the cloak, picking out the highest parts and the parts that would pick up the light the most. Then for the final highlights, I use Lustful Purple. Once again, this is a big jump, but don't worry, we're fixing it in the next step. Now it's time to fix the transitions. So I water down all three of the colours I used in the previous steps and start glazing back and forth to smoothen out the blends. You can also do some wet blending to smoothen them out too if you want. I did a combination of both. Just keep going back and forth between the three colours until you're happy with it. We each have our own line where we feel it's good enough, and that's fine. I mean, my line changes every single model I do, basically. Then it's time to work on the teal parts. While I thinned down the wash earlier, I did still go pretty heavy on it because I knew I didn't have a highlight colour that I could build up to for the teal. So that meant that Royal Cloak would have to be my only colour for doing the highlight here. So I needed the wash to give some nice shadows and darkness to build up from. This works fine assuming it's not like a main focal point for the model. You wouldn't get away with doing this on the cloak or even probably the shirt, but in this case it's fine and it worked out well. Then for the top, it's back to Sunset Orange to start building up the highlights. I'm not fully re-establishing the mid-tone here, as I think the darker tone from the wash works nicely as the mid-tone. Then for the final highlight for the shirt, I use a 50-50 mix of Sunset Orange and White. I'm just picking out the edges and the folds here. I do the eyes the normal way, with white, then a dot of Necromancer Cloak. We all know how the eyes work by now. For the flesh, I start with Barbarian Flesh. There isn't a lot of flesh on this model, so you're just looking to pick out the fingers, the top of the hands, and the raised parts of the face. Then a 50-50 mix of Barbarian Flesh and Elven Flesh is the next step. Working in the same areas but leaving some of the previous steps showing for that nice transition and gradient. Then with Elven Flesh, I pick out the cheekbones, the nose, and the very top of the hands for the final highlights. If you're filming this part, try to keep your hand out from in front of the camera. It makes it way easier to find good footage to include in the final video if your hand's not in the way of the camera. I didn't want to go too bright on the highlights for the hair, so I only ended up doing one layer of highlights here, which was just a dry brush of desert yellow. For the highlights on the leather, it's a 50-50 mix of leather brown and elven flesh. While you watch me do the leathers, you should hit the subscribe button. I'm only like 999,950 subscribers away from a million. We're so close, so go ahead, hit that subscribe and help push me across the line. And for the final highlight for the model, it's greedy gold. The moon was pretty easy to highlight, just hit the parts that are facing upwards. I also run my brush along the sides, leaving the recesses darker, while just really easily highlighting the sides. Then I picked out the part that runs around the handle of the staff, just to help it stand out a bit more. I'm still not a huge fan of the way the staff looks as full gold, but in the end it's not actually my opinion that matters on this model. Then it's the base. Just a couple of layers of oak brown. Then the rim of the base is black to finish it off. And we're done. As mentioned earlier, these were done a fair while back, so I did not have my turntable yet. So you get to see me turn him manually. Don't I do it so well? If you want to see the Barbarian from HeroQuest painted, click the video that's somewhere on your screen now. I'm not sure where it is when I'm recording this, but you'll see it, I promise. I hope you've enjoyed the video and it helps you with painting the wizard for your HeroQuest games. If you've hung around this long, why not give the video a like? And if you want to see the dwarf and elf painted, hit the subscribe button to be notified when I publish those videos. Thanks for watching, catch you in the next video.